This is our Verum bench planes made by Luban. So I've been working with this manufacturer for probably 10 years or more, and been working with them very closely over the last couple of years, including going to the factory and getting them to make planes to my own specification. As you can see, we've got a wide variety of planes available from Verum. Let's look at what we've actually done to make the brand so special for us and the components and design work we put into them. We put a lot of time and effort into working with the manufacturer to get this plane absolutely spot on for us. Let's look in detail and show you the components and what we've actually achieved. So the casting is really clean. It's a lost waxed casting. We have very clean and flat sole. These are a Bedrock style plane, which means that as part of the casting and the grinding of the plane body, we have a very large flat surface here. Onto the flat surface fits a Bedrock frog. So again, we have a very large machine surface. When that sits on there, it is rock solid, therefore the Bedrock name. On the back of the frog, we have this U or C section. This slots into the slot in here. By moving this screw in and out, brings the frog up and down the slope, so we can actually close down the mouth or open it back up. To fit the frog onto the body of the plane requires some screw fittings from the back here. So we have this screw with a slot on the back of it. The end of the screw has got a point on it, and that point locates into a cone shape in here. The two frog fixings will sit through these slots in the frog. The little pip mark needs to be at the back. The pip mark indicates where the cone is. When we put this through the frog and into the body of the plane, the pip mark will be at the back, which means we know when the screw goes in, it'll connect into the cone. And as this screw connects, it will actually draw the frog onto the plane's body. This is much better than the old screw system you'll find in standard planes that hold the frog down. What this really means with this setup is that we can actually adjust the frog backwards and forwards, closing down that mouth, but we can do that well. The frog's in position, the blade, the chip breaker and the lever cap is on, so all adjustments can be done from the back, and you can see in real time how close your mouth actually is. Looking at my old record plane that's had a lot of use over the years, the lateral adjustment lever is now not working at all because it's bent and out of the way. If I wanted to actually change the mouth setting on this, I've got to take off the lever cap, I've got to take out the blade and the chip breaker to expose the two screws holding down the frog. If I undo those two screws, I can then put a screw from the centre at the back to make my frog adjustment. You've then got to reassemble it and then see how close the mouth is. A real pain compared with the new Bedrock style planes. This over the years, I can see that I've tried to reflatten it and rework it, but trying to get all these pads fitting is so much more difficult than that lovely continuous slope we have within the Bedrock style. The Bedrock frog design is not a new design. This has been around from Stanley from over 100 years ago. Got a very nice machined flat area here for your plane blade and chip breaker to set onto. The screw at the top here can be adjusted up and down to actually make sure we've got the right tension for when the lever cap goes on later on. The lateral adjustment lever is not just the cheap bent metal you'll get with some. This is a nicely fabricated lateral adjustment lever. We have a bearing here. This bearing will sit in the slot of the blade so we can really get a nice left and right lateral adjustment as we move this around. We've got a fabricated screwed in brass tab, really nice to get your thumb onto. Underneath we have the brass adjusting wheel. This is a larger diameter than the standard. A larger diameter is much easier for you to adjust. The solid yoke or Y lever is beautifully manufactured, tight tolerances to the adjusting wheel, so we get very little backlash with the forward and back of the turning on the wheel to make that adjuster really moving our blade as we want it. One of the big innovations that Luban made is this dog bone or dicky bow shaped Y lever. This is an innovation, first time in probably 100 years when it's really changed in plane design. This gives a fantastic location for the blade when it's coming backwards and forwards. The original or traditional V-shape you'll get in a lot of plane manufacturers will be tight at one point when you're adjusting, but loose in others, and gives you a lot of movement on your blade, backlash problems. They've eliminated that with this beautiful design. Old record and Stanley planes often had one of these bent and pressed yokes or Y levers, really not very good quality. This one also, you can see actually where it's got worn over the years, it's kind of jammed up into the blade. The lateral adjustment lever on here, you can just see how over the years it's got worn as well. It's just a very cheap, it's bent, it's just not very precise at all, wobbling all over the place. Luban has a one-piece chip breaker. Old-fashioned chip breakers would be a thin bit of metal, a sort of bent shape, and they would actually put pressure on the blade and bend the blade over time. This is much flatter with a relief in there from their machining. Also, the dog bone Y lever is a beautiful connection into the chip breaker. With the rounded corners, dicky bow shape, actually means when it's in here, you've always got a really good connection without any binding and with absolute minimal amount of backlash. It's difficult to get the perfect shaped handle and size because everybody's hands are different. But I did discover over teaching hundreds of woodworkers that certain factors needed to be in there to make sure it was comfortable for the majority of people. I did find that the original handles on the planes were a bit tight and a bit of a pinch point in here, and would have people having problems with their hands if they were using it for a long time. So we started, when the students were here, reworking handles to try and find the perfect size. So we reworked wooden handles, trying to just make sure they're as comfortable as possible. From that we went on to a 3D printed version. That was one of the versions, and we moved on again to this version that we made up. We found that for the majority of people from testing, this was really comfortable for long-term use. And from that we developed onto the finished Verum version that will be on all of our planes, because if it's not comfortable, you won't want to use it. And I think you'll find you really will want to use these. That's a good introduction into Verum and the work we put into these planes. If you'd like more details, have a look at our other videos or check us out on woodworkersworkshop.co.uk.